I'm doing reviews again. I have wireless stuff this time around. I got a few of them, but we're gonna do them one by one. I left them here somewhere today. I got this like by SoundPEATS and tin and stuff like that. But today specifically, we're gonna look at the Air 3 Deluxe. So let's get started. Almost forgot, of course, this was sent out to me for review as well as those other things, but that won't affect my review in any way, shape, or form. Everything you're going to hear here is going to be my own personal opinion, and also, this is going to be more of a gaming focused review. This is one of those sets that has, like, a gaming mode, and, you know, we're going to talk about how that does, along with the sound and whatnot. So, you know, that being said, let's get started. Well, here we have the box of the Air 3 Deluxe, which has this beautiful man in the front of it, but on the back, we'll have the actual picture of what it should look like in theory. That said, cracking it open, we're going to have, of course, the earbuds inside the charging case itself, as well as a charging cable and some paperwork. Taking a closer look, the charging case is very light and fairly small. Kind of reminds me of the AirPods Pro case, only that it's shinier and black, and well, it's very much a fingerprint magnet, as you can tell. For comparison's sake, here's the AirPods Pro right next to it. As you can tell, they're pretty similar in size, and they've taken a lot of the design language from the AirPods Pros, only they're pairing buttons on the front, and they have USB-C on the bottom. The indicator LED is also in the same spot, and the earbuds are magnetically held in much like the AirPods. Now, the Air 3 Deluxes are actually designed to compete against the regular AirPods, not the AirPods Pros, as you can tell by design being very similar, with the no silicone tip design. The design still is technically different with the SoundPEATS badge, black plastic, but overall still very similar to the AirPods. For those curious, here's how they look on my head, and they're basically just black AirPods Pros, but a little bit fatter. Comfort on the bright side is about just the same, as they are very, very light on the ears. Now, these things do have touch controls, but not on the stem as much as on the little metal shield you see here, which I'm surprised to say is quite responsive. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this. Alright, now here's how the mic is essentially going to sound if you're going to be using the mic for calls and whatnot. And, you know, if I put on some, like, background noise to see if it captures like that sound over my own sound of, you know, my voice, well, you know, here you go. And it does a fairly good job, as it should during calls, but not like the best I've ever heard in the world, but it'll do. Alright, now it's pretty clear that this is essentially designed to compete with AirPods. You know, I mean, just look at these things. They're basically like little black versions of AirPods, with a few design changes being a little rounder here and there, and having like the S emblem of SoundPEATS. So, the thing about them is, being a competitor to AirPods, they also want to undercut them a bit, as that's how competition works, and you can get these things for, I wrote this down, $50, which is pretty damn good considering what you're going to get out of these guys. You get IPX4 water resistance, which means you can actually work out pretty comfortably with these guys, you know, unless, like, you're trying to work out in the rain, or you're trying to swim with them, which I don't recommend, but if you're a person who gets really sweaty, I think these things should be just fine for those workouts. Though, due to the fact that there is, like, no rubber ear tips to help, like, them stay in your ears, I'd be wary about workouts that have for more rigorous and quick, jerky movements. Things like weightlifting and like movements that are like more steady. I think this will be fine in your ears, unless your ears are really good at just holding these types of earbuds in. But for most of us out there who will probably need like silicone tips to keep them in, just do be wary, don't do anything too rigorous with them, because they might fall out of your ears during your workout. Speaking of falling out the ears, you can actually use either of them like individually. Like you can use one at a time. It can be either or, versus like only one being allowed because it's like the master unit. So, you know, you can have one in your ear until it runs out of batteries, and then switch to the other one, no problem. Another nice perk about these things is that when you do take them out of your ears, say when you're listening to music, there is an auto pause function, much like on the actual AirPods, so that's, you know, kind of nice. The battery life on these things is rated to be around 5 hours, which is about accurate unless you're like running at really, really high volumes, in which case I would probably chop off like maybe 40 minutes to an hour, in which case the battery life would be around 4 hours if you're listening to them to like really loud settings, and but if you're like listening to them at more medium, moderate volumes that don't damage your hearing, then you're probably going to get those full 5 hours. If you're listening at much quieter volumes for whatever reason, you might actually be able to push a little bit more than that. With the case, you get an extra 17 hours of battery life, giving you a total of 22 hours of playtime. Alright, now with the normal people stuff out of the way, let's talk more about the actual sound itself and gaming. Sound-wise, I was pleasantly surprised and not surprised at all at the same time, for several reasons. So, let's get a little bit more into that. So, what I did expect was a warm sound that was going to be very V-shaped, and I expected that very much due to the actual, you know, just due to the design of these types of earbuds. Due to the fact they don't have silicone tips, they have to make up for like the lack of bass, because typically when you don't have the silicone tips to give you a proper seal, bass can have trouble just, you know, existing. So they did really amp up the bass on this, and when it comes to these designs in general, they tend to like use very deep V's and then try to boost the mids to make up for the loss in the mids, and things just are very boosted. So needless to say, these things can get to very loud volumes, and at its medium level, it's still actually pretty loud. So the volume of these is pretty good, and you know, that's in conjunction with the sound itself. So with that V shape, it's got a pretty strong presence. The overall quality of the sound is just okay. I mean, it's not like the most amazing thing you'll ever hear. You're gonna get better sound quality out of something that's wired and cheaper, but you have to, you have to know that this is because of like how data flows through the air and Bluetooth and versus wired and whatnot. Bluetooth quality is never gonna really be as good as wired quality. So, considering that, that's not too bad. And if you also consider that you're getting all this for $50, the sound is still, it's decent. Like, it's something I wouldn't complain about at this price range and for what I'm hearing and what I'm getting. Now, let's get a little bit more actual detail into what the sound is kind of like. So, considering how the sound is like tuned, there is like a punchier bass versus a boomier bass. And this definitely has to do a lot with the fact that it's not using the silicone chips and it's got that more open style, which necessarily isn't like bad because there are benefits which I'll get into a little bit later. But just know, like, at the bass range, it is going to be more punchy than it is boomy, and it's not like the greatest bass you're going to get in the world. I can at the very least say that they did the best they could with this type of design for the bass, and that considered, I think they did a pretty good job. Now, when it comes to the mids and the highs, you can definitely tell those have also been kind of boosted and sometimes come off a little bit shouty if you're at like a little bit of higher volumes, but you can control the volume a bit. It's not quite as shouty, but just know those are also like a bit boosted up a little bit. This isn't necessarily bad because it did like help bring out a lot of the details in the mid and higher range. It's not like the best I've ever heard in the world, but once again, I'm comparing them to IEMs, which are like wired, and considering for Bluetooth, like if I think about it, it's not bad. I did kind of like it for some tracks because there is the convenience of it being wireless and it is very light in my head, but back to actual sound, I'd say in the mid-range you get a fair amount of detail. It is pressed a little bit forward, and I think it does do better from like the upper mids to the high range. The high range doesn't go like super high. It has a pretty decent like height, but it rolls off a little bit early. That way it never gets really harsh. Should the sound itself not like suit your taste, you can actually use the app to adjust it because there is an equalizer in case you want to mess with that. And I could tell you how things get affected by that, but then that's a lot to get into, and I'm not going to. This is essentially how it sounds from its base form, which I know a lot of you guys are going to do because I know a lot of you guys will be too lazy to use the app. But for those of you who will use the app, you will be able to make various adjustments to the IEMs themselves, or rather the earbuds themselves. I'm so used to saying IEMs, but to the earbuds themselves, the Air 3 Deluxes, you can make various adjustments on the apps to your liking, which is kind of nice. Things I did notice was like things like ANC and like the transparent mode, which didn't really exist. Not sure why it's on the app. I think that's just a flub maybe, but that's not quite there. I did notice there was like noise cancellation for like the microphone. That's something they did advertise, but that's for like calls, and yeah, it's pretty normal. And for those of you who really don't want to use the app, I'd use it at least maybe once just to at least update the firmware, because that can be done, and sometimes there are nice notes to it, but it's not necessarily necessary. But for me personally, I just like to have things always up to date. Quick pairing is a thing on these guys, but unfortunately, unlike AirPods, you can't like quickly pair them to two devices very easily, in which case, like if you're trying to pair this to a second device, you have to like unpair from the first device and then pair it to the second device. They can't be connected at the same time. And if it's connected to that one device, you can't just like use the second device and connect it to this quickly without like disconnecting it from the last device before. For some reason, only Apple has figured that out, and most other Bluetooth devices haven't figured that out quite yet for whatever reason, but I guess that's kind of normal, but I still wish we could just do that easily where, like, it's connected to one device, you stop using it, but it's still connected, and then you turn on the other device, you want to connect it to that device and make it easy to, connect it to the device that you've already paired it to, but, connection stuff is weird. Darn you, Apple, share your recipe with people. But yeah, on the bright side, it still will quickly pair to the last device that it was paired to, so that's that. Now moving on to the soundstage, that's where these things surprised me, but it also kind of made sense at the same time. Due to this design, it's actually fairly open, and because of this, the soundstage was surprisingly large for like an earbud, especially like a wireless earbud. And I do have to say, it is definitely because of this this design. It just makes it like similar to an open back, which a lot of people who are like into like earbuds and stuff will know. So the soundstage is definitely larger than usual for an earbud, so it's not like bigger than headphones, but for an earbud, it is definitely pretty large. The width is really good. The depth is just okay, so you'll have more width than depth, but surprisingly, it's not like a crazy difference, so it's like a really large oval still. The height of them is actually also really good, which I did notice in games, which we'll get to in a bit. But for musicality, this whole entire use of the stage was really nice. You get a really good sense of like airiness and space in the sound, which did help play a part in imaging, which made it feel fairly accurate. It wasn't like super mega pinpoint, but I thought the accuracy of the imaging was actually pretty good. And this did show off its abilities in games, utilizing like the soundstage's size and also its height height a lot, and just using it very well with the imaging. It was a pretty good pair due to the tuning of the sound being very, more mid and high focus, and while trying to boost like the bass at the same time. I found them actually pretty good for like competitive shooters. Though I should note that there is a gaming mode on these guys, and the thing about gaming mode is oftentimes on like earbuds, especially more budgety ones, if you turn on the gaming mode, what it does is it'll lower sound quality so it can like increase bit rates for latency. These don't do that. You still get the same sound quality you're getting from music for gaming, so it doesn't take a hit on the sound quality if you lower the latency to play games, which is really, really good. That said, with the sound that you're getting from the music being also the sound you're getting from the games, you can expect it to be good for competitive shooters because of basically what I just mentioned before. Just utilizing the details in the mids and the highs to help like hunt for things, and utilizing that really large sound stage for an IM, which is still constrained, so it's not like too big where it's like ridiculous. So therefore, you still get an edge in competitive shooters, hearing people come early, so you can like pinpoint where they are from a distance without like not hearing them because they're too damn far away and the thing trying to give you more realistic sound. There's a whole video I could probably do on that. But point is, it's pretty darn good for like competitive shooter games. And this is whether you're playing on PC, if you're playing on Nintendo Switch, or mobile. Like, yeah, I tried it on all those things and it did a pretty good job, despite like there being like codec differences between all them all. Due to the gaming mode, it bypasses this whole codec situation, which it surprisingly does a good job. The gaming mode definitely gets a really good thumbs up for me because this sort of latency on a wireless earbud was almost unheard of, and unless it used a codec or a special USB dongle. But with what it does with just Bluetooth and like just what they've built into it, it's pretty damn great. I do like the fact that they did gaming mode so well on these. There is one downside though, and that is battery. You can expect to lose a bit of battery life and due to the gaming mode, I would say. It wasn't too bad though, because while gaming with them, I still lasted around 4 hours at medium volume with gaming mode on, and before they died. But your mileage varied depending on like, how loud you set these guys. I almost forgot, for people playing more non-competitive games, they still just do an okay job. There is a lot of mid and high presence, which gets you all those little nitty-gritty details, but it's not the greatest sound quality in the world, so the details aren't like as well presented as something that is quiet. But once again, considering that it's wireless and the limits of that, it does a pretty okay job. The bass is just okay and gives an okay like amount of depth to the world. The soundstage still does feel very large in those worlds, and it does make the world feel big, but I think more of the lower bass would give more oomph to the sound, giving this more full feeling to the world. Because sometimes, it just, while it did feel large and there was a good airiness about it, it was lacking body to the sound, that lower grunt, that oomph at the lower end of the sound spectrum in the sounds of the world. And those ones just weren't as strong as these. And once again, that's due to the design. But still, for non-competitive games, I'd say did a pretty good job. It's not like the greatest. It does do better in competitive than non-competitive. But yeah, that's basically all I have for these guys today. If you're like a gamer who wants something like AirPods that can play games with them with low latency, these things do a pretty good job. I definitely would get them, and they only cost $50, so considering what they're getting, I definitely recommend them. I'm quite surprised by how they are. I like them a lot, all things considered. There are, of course, those few caveats here due to design. Don't expect a whole crazy amount of bass. Charging is just okay. Battery life is about average, but for $50, still a pretty damn good package. I'm just still very surprised by how well they did in gaming. That was I was not expecting that to happen. This it's quite a shock. So whatever SoundPEATS is doing with this whole like gaming mode thing while still giving quality, keep doing it. Make better ones. Make $100 sets that can do things even better. I'm very excited by what they'll be like making in the future. Though I do have another set which is supposed to be like a slightly better version, which we'll talk about in the next video. But for the time being, this is all I got for this guy today. So if you want to buy it, I will have a link in the description if you want to purchase this guy. I do think I do get a kickback if you purchase from that link. So buy from there, support my channel, just help me exist. Another way you can support is also liking this channel, subscribing if you want to see more content from me with that notification bell thingy. Hit it so you know when I'm posting next. Though I do think the algorithm is acting up on YouTube again. So yeah, I don't know. That's just for notifications. YouTube is funny like that. So, that being said, that's all I got for today. So, stand by next time. We'll have the review of this guy soon. So, I'll see you guys next time.